What if the most important thing influencing your life is something you have never consciously perceived? Not a belief, not a memory, not a thought, a signal, a hidden pattern moving beneath ordinary awareness, shaping what captures your attention, what feels meaningful, and why certain moments seem to arrive with impossible precision. Modern physics has revealed that reality is far stranger than it appears on the surface. Beneath the world of solid objects exists a deeper layer of energy, information, and connection. But what if consciousness can respond to aspects of that hidden layer long before the conscious mind understands what is happening? There may be a frequency woven into experience itself, a frequency most people pass through without ever noticing, and once it is recognized, the way you see yourself, reality, and your place within it may never be the same again. The invisible signal hidden beneath ordinary awareness. Why do most people never notice the deeper layer of information influencing their perceptions, decisions, and sense of reality? Every moment, the human mind is flooded with an enormous amount of information. Sounds, images, memories, emotions, expectations, and countless sensory inputs compete for attention. To function efficiently, the brain filters most of this information before it ever reaches conscious awareness. As a result, people often assume that what they consciously perceive is the complete picture of reality. Yet modern studies of perception suggest that awareness may only be accessing a small fraction of what is actually being processed beneath the surface. This raises a fascinating possibility. What if there are patterns, connections, and forms of information continuously influencing experience without ever appearing as clear thoughts? What if many of the decisions people believe are entirely rational are being shaped by signals emerging from deeper levels of consciousness long before the conscious mind becomes aware of them? Consider those moments when you suddenly feel drawn toward a certain idea, place, or person without being able to explain why. At first, the attraction seems to appear from nowhere, yet beneath awareness, countless observations may have already been gathered and integrated into a subtle form of recognition. The conscious mind experiences only the final result, while the deeper process remains hidden. Some thinkers have proposed that consciousness may be connected to a far richer field of information than ordinary perception reveals. While science has not established such claims as fact, the possibility invites an intriguing question. Could awareness be responding to patterns that exist beyond the narrow boundaries of deliberate thought? Most people move through life focused on the loudest signals: immediate problems, external goals, constant stimulation, and the endless stream of information competing for attention. In doing so, they rarely notice the quieter currents operating beneath the surface. These subtle influences do not announce themselves with certainty. They often appear as intuitions, sudden insights, recurring themes, or an unexpected sense that something is significant before any logical explanation arrives. The invisible signal, then, may not be a mysterious transmission arriving from somewhere else. It may be the deeper intelligence of consciousness itself, an underlying layer of awareness continuously detecting patterns, relationships, and possibilities that the conscious mind has not yet learned to recognize. The question is not whether information exists beneath awareness. The question is how much of your life may already be shaped by signals you have never consciously noticed. The strange pull towards certain moments and destinies in life that seems different from ordinary events. A conversation with a stranger changes the direction of your future. A book appears at exactly the right time. A single decision, which seems insignificant at first, opens a path that affects everything that follows. Looking back, these moments often feel as though they carried a hidden significance long before we understood their importance. Most people have experienced situations that create a powerful sense of recognition. It is not merely familiarity. It feels as though reality itself has arranged a meeting between you and a particular experience. Logic can explain part of what happened, yet something about the event continues to feel deeper than chance alone. One reason these experiences seem so extraordinary is that the human mind naturally sees life moving forward, one moment at a time. We rarely notice the countless factors that are quietly converging beneath the surface. Decisions made years earlier, Unnoticed observations, subtle influences, and unexpected connections may all be moving toward a single point of intersection. When that intersection finally occurs, it can feel as though something larger has been guiding the process all along. From a quantum-inspired perspective, some thinkers suggest that reality may contain far more interconnectedness than everyday awareness reveals. Rather than existing as isolated events, experiences may emerge from networks of relationships that stretch across time, memory, and perception. While this remains a subject of exploration rather than established fact, it offers an intriguing way of understanding why certain encounters feel unusually meaningful. Consider how often people describe being drawn toward a place they had never planned to visit, pursuing an interest they cannot explain, or meeting someone who unexpectedly transforms their understanding of themselves. These experiences often begin with a subtle feeling rather than a logical conclusion. Something seems to pull attention in a particular direction before the reasons become clear. What makes these moments so powerful is not simply the event itself. It is the sense that the experience was connected to something already unfolding beneath awareness. The conscious mind arrives late to the process. By the time an opportunity appears, countless unseen conditions may have already aligned to make it possible. This does not necessarily mean that every event is predetermined. Rather, it suggests that life may contain deeper patterns than we usually recognize. Certain moments stand out because they reveal those patterns for an instant. They create the feeling that reality is not merely a sequence of random occurrences but a dynamic field of connections continually shaping possibilities. The strange pull toward certain moments may therefore be more than coincidence. It may reflect the way consciousness responds to emerging pathways before the conscious mind fully understands them. What feels like destiny could be the recognition of patterns that were forming long before they became visible. And when those patterns finally emerge into awareness, they often leave us with the unmistakable feeling that something important was waiting to be discovered. The frequency that exists beyond thought and language. Human beings often assume that thinking is the primary way reality is understood. We trust words, concepts, explanations, and logical reasoning because they help us organize experience into something familiar and manageable. Yet some of the most significant moments in life seem to occur before words ever appear. There are times when you instantly know something is important without being able to explain why. A feeling arises, a recognition emerges, or a sudden clarity appears long before the mind can construct a logical narrative around it. This raises an intriguing question. What if consciousness is capable of receiving information in ways that do not depend on language at all? Language is a remarkable tool, but it is also a translation system. Before an experience becomes a thought, and before a thought becomes a sentence, something else happens first. There is a direct encounter with reality. The mind then attempts to interpret that encounter, giving it labels, descriptions, and meaning. In many cases, however, the original experience is richer than the words used to describe it. Think about how difficult it can be to explain certain emotions. You may feel awe while looking at the night sky, a deep connection during an unexpected conversation, or a powerful certainty about a decision that changes your life. Words can describe parts of these experiences, but they rarely capture the full depth of what was actually felt. Something meaningful is perceived before language arrives to interpret it. Many people have experienced moments when an answer seemed to appear suddenly from nowhere. A problem that resisted analysis becomes clear during a walk, a dream, or a quiet moment of reflection. The solution does not emerge through step-by-step reasoning. Instead, it arrives all at once, as though it had already been forming beneath awareness. Logic may later explain the insight, but the insight itself often appears first. From a quantum-inspired perspective, some thinkers propose that consciousness may interact with patterns of information that exist beneath the level of ordinary thought. While such ideas remain speculative, they point toward an important possibility. Awareness may be processing far more than the conscious mind can immediately express. What appears as intuition, inspiration, or sudden understanding may reflect information that has already been integrated before it becomes available to deliberate thinking. This can be seen in everyday life. You may enter a room and instantly sense tension before anyone speaks. You may meet a person and feel trust or caution before identifying a specific reason. You may notice recurring symbols, ideas, or opportunities appearing across different areas of your life and feel that they are connected even before understanding the connection. These experiences suggest that perception is not limited to conscious analysis. Something deeper is constantly gathering information and forming impressions. The challenge is that modern life encourages constant mental activity. Attention is pulled from one task to another, leaving little space for quieter forms of awareness to become noticeable. The more crowded the mind becomes, the harder it can be to recognize subtle insights emerging from beneath the surface. As a result, many of the signals consciousness may be receiving are drowned out before they are fully perceived. The frequency that exists beyond thought and language is not necessarily a literal signal moving through space. It can be understood as a metaphor for a deeper mode of perception, one that operates before concepts, before explanations, and before the mind begins its endless process of interpretation. It is the level at which awareness encounters reality directly rather than through the filter of words. This is why some truths feel impossible to explain yet immediately recognizable. They do not arrive as arguments to be evaluated. They arrive as experiences to be recognized. The mind may spend hours searching for understanding, while awareness has already sensed what is important. In this view, consciousness is not merely a machine that produces thoughts. It may be a field of perception capable of responding to patterns long before they become ideas. The words come later, the explanations come later, the logic comes later. But the first contact with meaning may occur in a silent space beyond language, where awareness recognizes something essential before it can ever be spoken. Why some truths feel remembered rather than learned. Olden Fay. When a new idea does not feel new at all, you encounter a concept, hear a perspective, or experience an insight, and instead of feeling as though you have learned something for the first time, it feels strangely familiar. The experience carries a sense of recognition rather than discovery. It is as if the knowledge was already present somewhere within you, waiting for the right moment to emerge into awareness. This feeling has fascinated philosophers, mystics, and thinkers for centuries. Why do certain truths feel instantly recognizable even when we have never consciously encountered them before? Why do some insights arrive with a certainty that seems deeper than ordinary learning? Most forms of learning involve gathering information from the outside world. We read, listen, observe, and gradually build understanding through experience. Yet not every realization follows this process. Sometimes a single sentence can transform the way you see reality. Sometimes an experience reveals something that feels self-evident the moment it is understood. The insight does not seem foreign. It feels as though a forgotten piece of a larger picture has suddenly fallen into place. Consider how people often describe profound moments of understanding. They rarely say, "I collected enough information to reach this conclusion." More often they say, "I finally saw what had been there all along." The language itself suggests recognition rather than acquisition. Something hidden becomes visible. Something overlooked becomes obvious. The truth appears less like an addition and more like a revelation. From a psychological perspective, this may reflect the way the mind organizes information beneath conscious awareness. Long before an insight becomes visible, the brain may be connecting experiences, memories, observations, and patterns in the background. When the connections become strong enough, the realization suddenly enters awareness as a complete picture. Because the underlying process was invisible, the insight feels as though it arrived instantly. Yet some thinkers have proposed a deeper possibility. What if awareness is not merely assembling information from experience? What if consciousness contains layers that extend beyond ordinary memory and deliberate thought? In this view, certain truths feel remembered because they resonate with structures already present within awareness itself. The insight does not create something entirely new. It awakens something that was dormant. This idea appears in many different traditions. Throughout history, there have been suggestions that human beings possess an innate capacity to recognize deeper realities when the conditions are right. According to this perspective, wisdom is not always something added from outside. Sometimes it is uncovered from within. Learning becomes less about accumulation and more about revelation. Modern experiences often reflect this phenomenon in subtle ways. A person may spend years searching for purpose, and then suddenly encounter an idea that explains feelings they could never put into words. Another person may discover a scientific concept that immediately resonates with intuitions they have carried for decades. Others describe moments during meditation, reflection, or deep concentration when an understanding emerges with such clarity that it feels impossible to ignore. What makes these moments powerful is not merely the information itself. It is the feeling that the insight belongs to something larger than conscious reasoning. The truth seems to fit into place with unusual precision, as though it was anticipated long before it was understood. In a quantum-inspired view of consciousness, some theorists speculate that awareness may be connected to a broader field of information than we normally perceive. While such ideas remain exploratory, they offer an interesting framework for understanding why certain realizations feel less like inventions and more like recognitions. Consciousness may not always be creating meaning from scratch. It may sometimes be uncovering patterns that were already present beneath the surface. This does not mean that every intuition is correct or that every feeling of recognition reveals an ultimate truth. Human perception can be mistaken, yet the recurring experience of remembering rather than learning points toward an important mystery. Awareness often seems capable of recognizing significance before it can explain it. This is why the most transformative insights rarely feel like facts being added to a collection of knowledge. They feel like doors opening within the mind. They reveal connections that were invisible moments before. They illuminate aspects of reality that suddenly appear obvious once seen. In the context of the hidden frequency we have been exploring, these moments may represent times when consciousness becomes aligned with deeper layers of information already present within itself. The signal is not introducing something entirely foreign. It is helping awareness recognize what has been quietly waiting beneath the surface all along. And perhaps the reason some truths feel remembered rather than learned is because the deepest discoveries are not always about finding something new. Sometimes they are about finally recognizing what has been there from the beginning, hidden beneath the noise of everyday perception, waiting for awareness to become still enough to see it. The hidden resonance connecting you to a greater reality. Throughout life, certain experiences seem to repeat themselves in ways that are difficult to ignore. A particular idea keeps appearing from different sources. The same lesson emerges through different situations. A symbol, theme, or question follows you across months or even years. At first, these repetitions may seem accidental, yet after enough occurrences, many people begin to wonder whether something deeper is taking place beneath the surface of ordinary events. Human beings are naturally skilled at recognizing patterns. This ability has helped our species survive, learn, and adapt. However, not every pattern feels the same. Some repetitions seem purely random, while others carry an unusual sense of meaning. They feel as though they are pointing towards something important, something that awareness has not fully understood yet. Imagine repeatedly encountering the same message during different stages of life. You hear it in a conversation, find it in a book, notice it in a film, and unexpectedly encounter it again during a personal challenge. Each appearance seems unrelated, yet together they form a larger picture. The experience creates the feeling that life is drawing attention toward a particular insight, as though reality itself is highlighting something that deserves to be noticed. One explanation is that the mind becomes more sensitive to certain information once it gains personal significance. When an idea matters deeply, awareness begins noticing related patterns that were previously ignored. Yet this explanation does not fully account for the powerful sense of connection many people report. Often the experience feels less like actively searching and more like being found by something unexpectedly meaningful. This is where the idea of resonance becomes useful. In physics, Resonance occurs when one system responds strongly to a frequency that matches its natural characteristics. In a symbolic sense, consciousness may operate in a similar way. Certain ideas, experiences, and insights seem to resonate with something already present within us. They capture attention not because they are loud, but because they align with deeper aspects of awareness. Some thinkers suggest that reality may be far more interconnected than it appears, rather than existing as isolated observers moving through a disconnected world. Consciousness and environment may participate in an ongoing exchange of information. While such interpretations remain speculative, they offer an intriguing framework for understanding why some experiences feel unusually synchronized with our inner lives. Consider those moments when intuition arrives before evidence. You feel drawn toward a decision before fully understanding why. You sense that a particular opportunity deserves attention even when logic provides no certainty. Later, events unfold in a way that reveals the significance of that initial feeling. Experiences like these create the impression that awareness may be responding to patterns that are not yet visible to conscious reasoning. Inner recognition often plays a central role in these moments. Unlike ordinary belief, recognition carries a quiet certainty. It does not demand proof in the same way intellectual arguments do. It feels as though something within you immediately understands the significance of what is being encountered. The experience is less like persuasion and more like alignment. Many of the most meaningful transformations begin this way. A person encounters an idea that feels strangely important. They cannot fully explain the attraction, yet they continue returning to it. Over time, the idea grows into a deeper understanding that changes how they see themselves and the world. Looking back, the first moment of recognition often appears as the beginning of a process that had been unfolding long before it became conscious. The hidden resonance may therefore be understood as the relationship between awareness and the larger patterns in which it exists. Life is not merely a collection of isolated events. Every experience emerges within a vast network of relationships, influences, possibilities, and connections. Most of these remain invisible to ordinary perception, yet their effects may still be felt through intuition, meaningful coincidences, recurring themes, and moments of unexpected clarity. The observer is often imagined as separate from reality, standing apart and looking outward at an external world. But what if this separation is incomplete? What if consciousness is participating in reality more deeply than it realizes? In that case, recurring patterns may not simply be events happening around you. They may be signs of an ongoing interaction between awareness and the larger field of existence itself. This possibility changes the way we interpret meaningful experiences. Instead of seeing them as random anomalies, they become invitations to pay closer attention. The recurring symbols, the persistent intuitions, and the moments of inner recognition may all represent points where a deeper connection briefly becomes visible. The hidden resonance is not something that needs to be created. Perhaps it already exists. Perhaps consciousness is constantly immersed within a greater reality, responding to patterns and relationships that extend far beyond what can be immediately seen. And every so often, through a moment of intuition, synchronicity, or profound recognition, that connection reveals itself just enough to remind us that we may be part of something far larger than we usually imagine. The moment you finally hear what was always there, attention is directed outward. The mind becomes occupied with goals, responsibilities, distractions, worries, and the constant stream of information arriving from the world. Thoughts compete for attention from the moment we wake until the moment we sleep. Because this mental activity feels normal, many people never question it. They assume that reality is exactly what appears within this ongoing flow of thoughts, reactions, and interpretations. Yet there are moments when something changes, not because the world becomes different, but because awareness begins relating to it in a different way. A person may experience this shift during a period of deep reflection, after a life-changing event, through meditation, during a moment of unexpected clarity, or simply in a quiet instant when the usual noise of the mind temporarily subsides. Suddenly, what once seemed obvious no longer appears complete. Reality feels larger, deeper, and more interconnected than before. This transformation rarely arrives as a dramatic revelation accompanied by certainty. More often, it begins subtly. You notice that your thoughts are not the entirety of who you are. You become aware that emotions can arise and pass without defining your identity. You recognize that much of what you previously accepted as reality was actually an interpretation of reality rather than reality itself. At first, this realization may seem small, yet its implications are profound. When awareness stops identifying completely with the constant movement of thought, a new perspective becomes possible. Instead of being carried away by every mental story, consciousness begins observing those stories. Instead of being trapped within every fear, expectation, or assumption, awareness starts recognizing them as temporary experiences occurring within a larger field of perception. This is where the hidden signal becomes important. Throughout this journey, we have explored the possibility that beneath ordinary awareness exists a deeper layer of information, recognition, and connection. The signal is not necessarily a literal transmission. It represents the subtle patterns, intuitions, insights, and forms of knowing that often remain unnoticed beneath the noise of everyday thinking. Most people spend years listening only to the loudest voices in their experience, the voice of fear, the voice of habit, the voice of social conditioning, the voice of endless mental commentary. These voices demand attention because they are immediate and familiar. Yet beneath them may exist a quieter level of awareness that has been present all along. Imagine standing beside a waterfall. The roar of the water is so overwhelming that softer sounds disappear completely. Then, as you move farther away, you begin hearing things that were always there. The wind moving through trees, distant birds, subtle movements in the environment. Nothing new was added. The noise simply stopped dominating perception. Consciousness may function in a similar way. When mental noise becomes less dominant, awareness gains access to aspects of experience that were previously hidden. Insights emerge more naturally. Patterns become easier to recognize. Intuition feels clearer. Life begins to reveal connections that once seemed invisible. The world itself has not changed, yet perception has expanded. Many people describe this shift as feeling more awake than before. Not because they have acquired new information, but because they have become aware of dimensions of experience that were previously overlooked. They begin noticing how often assumptions shape perception. They recognize how frequently fear narrows possibilities. They see that much of reality remains hidden, not because it is absent, but because attention has been directed elsewhere. From a quantum-inspired perspective, some thinkers suggest that consciousness may participate in reality more actively than traditional models assume. While such ideas remain subjects of ongoing debate, they point toward a fascinating possibility. Awareness may not merely observe reality but continuously interact with it through perception, interpretation, and meaning. If this is true, then the moment you finally hear what was always there is not the discovery of something external. It is the recognition of a relationship that has existed from the beginning. The observer and the observed are no longer experienced as completely separate. The world is no longer seen as a collection of disconnected events. Instead, life begins to appear as an unfolding network of relationships, patterns, and possibilities in which consciousness itself plays a role. This shift does not provide all the answers. It does not eliminate uncertainty or solve every mystery. In many ways, it reveals how much remains unknown. Yet it replaces unconscious certainty with conscious curiosity. It opens the door to a deeper engagement with reality. And perhaps that is the true meaning of hearing the signal beneath the noise. The signal was never hidden in a distant place. It was never reserved for a select few. It was never waiting at the end of a long search. It was present in every moment, in every intuition, every recognition, every unexplained sense of meaning, and every glimpse of awareness beyond thought. The profound shift occurs when consciousness finally stops searching for the signal as something separate from itself and realizes that the capacity to recognize it has been present all along. Reality is no longer experienced as something happening only around you. it becomes something you are actively participating in. The noise loses its authority, the deeper pattern becomes visible, and what once seemed hidden is recognized as something that was quietly present from the very beginning, waiting for awareness to notice it. What if the signal was never hidden from the world, but hidden by the noise that fills the mind? Throughout this journey, we explored the possibility that beneath thoughts, distractions, and appearances exists a deeper pattern quietly shaping the way reality is experienced. Not a voice, not a message, but a resonance that seems to appear whenever awareness becomes still enough to notice it. The greatest discovery is not finding a mysterious frequency. It is realizing that consciousness itself may be capable of perceiving far more than it has been conditioned to believe. And if that is true, then the signal you were never supposed to hear may not be somewhere out there. It may be waiting within the part of you that has been listening all along.